Ladies and gentlemen, this is the one and only Small World Soccer Report, and it's coming to you through video for the first time ever. This is Danny, as always, bringing you Small World in podcast form, and it is my great pleasure to introduce to you who you can already see on your screen, actually, unless you're listening through our podcasting service. This is Dennis Crowley of Kingston Stockade FC. Dennis, welcome to the show, lending a little star power this morning.
Hey, thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, cannot wait to hear your thoughts on some of the lower league soccer content that's been happening this week. And we'll get to you and Stockade in a minute, but definitely want to hit that super heavily this week because you guys are doing some awesome things. But we have to start. We have to start with weirdness of the week. This is Small World. Where else can we go? It's weirdness is what we do. And so you guys were actually at the center of one of our weirdness topics. NPSL Classics has been kind of running throughout the summer. And so for those who do not know, NPSL Classics was kind of a series of games that the NPSL decided to bring back on MyCujo and restream over the years. And you guys were in one of those games. Tell us a little bit about that process and like how you figured out you were going to play in that game. And it was interesting because it was a 3-0 win. It wasn't a very classic game in the sense of it was just nail biter and somebody scored last minute. You guys dominated that game.
Yeah, Boston has always been a tough rival for us, and really since the club's been around, they've always been a handful. And so I believe that was the first time that we ever beat Boston at home, and we were having a great season. The team was performing really well, and initially, I think what's interesting is when we internally at the club were talking about, they're going to air this this match of us at Boston. I think there was a typo in the first email. So it's they're going to air the game of us playing at Boston. That wasn't a great game. And we lost. That was 2 years ago. We had to go back and check our notes. And then, right before it aired, we were like, oh, wait, actually, this is the one at home. And this was a great game. The stands were packed. We beat Boston. It's always fun to kind of relive some of those moments, especially because you're not even I haven't been to the stadium at all this season. I haven't kicked a ball with another human in, 2 months. So it's just nice to relive it through that.
Yeah, no, and that's a great point because the stadium was full, and the energy was fantastic. Obviously, the energy on the pitch was fantastic too, but the support was excellent as it was the entire season. But you're right, that was an awesome game. As far as the atmosphere goes and as far as how the fans were responding, it was fun. And Small World actually got to present that match. So they reached out to I guess all of NPSL's media partners, which Small World happens to be one, and they assigned us all these different NPSL Classic games. And I was like, oh, that's crazy because Boston City was one of the first clubs that ever followed us. We happened to be in a conversation with them about something that was going on. And so they were our third follower all the way back in August.
They're a good club. They've got good owners and good coaches. It's always been a good rival for us. They have good fans. It's competitive, but there's a good friendly banter between their fans and our fans. And so that's always, it's always a big match for us when Boston comes up here. And then I always make the trek back to Boston, to watch us play on the road.
Right. Yeah, no, you need that banter too, something to kind of hold on to that's fun, that the fans can have a rival, and like you said, it's good natured, but just that element of this match means more to us.
That's cool. One of the best things I think about the NPSL and just about lower level soccer in general. A lot of people will have, they'll cheer for the national team. Maybe they'll have an MLS team that they root for as well. But for a lot of folks in smaller markets, that's their NPSL team is their go-to team. And so people get super, super passionate about it. And we see this when we play, Boston, we see this when we play Hartford. it's always a handful of teams, especially in our conference, that just have like amazing supporters groups, and it's like one of the best parts of the league, in my opinion.
Oh yeah, no, I definitely agree. Just those fan bases getting to interact. That's really the cool part of soccer as a whole. But like you said, especially at lower levels, that's rare to be able to have kind of interaction and to have enough fans where that can be a meaningful interaction. It's clubs like you guys, and you mentioned Hartford too. They have a fantastic supporters group too. But really, all up and down that whole New York kind of really the whole New England area. There's a lot of cool clubs up there.
So many fans all throughout the country, and there's such a limited number of MLS teams, right? And so you look at Rhode Island and Lowell, Massachusetts, and Boston City plays in Revere, Mass, which is outside of Boston. But people want to see high quality matches, right? And so a lot of people, like an MLS team is like an hour drive away or more than that. Where we are in Kingston, you want to drive down and see NYCFC play or see the Red Bulls play. That's a 2-hour trip, 2 hour plus. So to have a local team that plays at a competitive at a high level is a big boom for the for the sport and for the fans, and people really get into it.
Yeah, no, and it's a source of pride too, I think. Like just that element of this is my team in my city. It's not the overarching, like I have to share this with all of whatever bigger metro area. Like this is for my area. That's
we see a lot of that in Kingston for sure. You see a lot of people walking around with hats and shirts and stickers on their cars, and people love it, right? People really like gravitate and identify to it. And so it's been such a drag this summer where that's like it's missing from my life, where like I love organizing, I love bringing people together, and every time I run into town to go to the grocery store or get a coffee or something, because we're just starting to open back up again, up here in the Hudson Valley. People always mention it's like, oh man, I wish we could go to a game. I so wish we could get a game to look forward to on Saturday. It's like I know. Next season, we'll be back next season though.
Yeah, I know it is tough. Like that's all you can offer people right now is next season. But there's a gaping hole in the hearts of all of us who are soccer fans. And actually a fantastic unplanned segue into our next piece of weirdness, and that is around Protagonist Soccer. So I'm sure you're very familiar with Protagonist and what they do. They have been covering lower league soccer. They're the lower league soccer OGs. If that's probably the easiest way to put it. If you don't know who Protagonist Soccer is and you're listening to this, what are you doing? Literally just go figure out who Protagonist is and then listen to the rest of the podcast. But they put out an article pretty recently that I loved and I felt really related to SmallWorld situation as well. And it was all about the return to play and how there's this conundrum as soccer media outlets that cover soccer, and that's our entire job. But there's also this moral compass of how do we feel about these clubs returning in a time when it may not be the right decision to do so. Where do we have to draw the line of we can't cover this, it's morally against what we want to do. So it was a fantastic view, and Dan Vaughn, the editor out there at Protagonist, is a fantastic writer, fantastic human being too, from my interactions with him. And I don't know if you've read that article, but it was just a fantastic view into just the two-sided nature of that, and how the return to soccer isn't going to be covered as easily as it would seem. It's like, oh look, soccer's back, we're going to cover it now. There's a moral element to it also.
Yeah. It's like different different leagues are taking different approaches, right? So it's interesting to see the Bundesliga coming back and seeing all the different things you could do to try to simulate fans in the crowd, right? And then to have the Premier League coming back, I think MLS is on the schedule to come back in July. I can't remember what the exact date is. And then the MPSL, we canceled our season relatively early. It had to be like the end of March, beginning of April, which is a tough decision. But you got to remember, like people are planning. Like you got to like they're buying stuff, they're reserving stadiums. You got to spend capital in order to make the team run. And so it was a challenging decision to go ahead and say, listen, we're going to have to cancel the season. A lot of what we were doing was based off of USASA. We play under USASA, which is part of the U.S. Soccer Pyramid and the federation, and they were suspended too. So there wasn't too much we could do. It's tricky, and every league has different decisions to make. Regional leagues can look at it differently than a national league can. Where there is more travel, the crowds might be bigger, and ultimately it comes down to what's the most responsible thing to do, not just for the players, but for the fans, for the people that gather and want to get together.
Yeah, no, I think that idea is important, that it's not just one cookie cutter response for every league in every situation, because like you said, it's situational. It's dependent on a lot of different variables, and different leagues, even at the same level, even comparing across the same like imaginary tier of lower league soccer, the challenges are a lot different depending on the league.
Yeah.
And
plus we have a short season, right? And so the thinking was, well, what's it going to be like in June, right? I was just looking at my calendar a minute ago, and I was noticing, like, gosh, the playoffs would have normally been coming up in like 2 weeks for us. And it kind of breaks my heart, right? Because like we never announced our schedule. We never got to the point where we released it. Like, I caught up in all things COVID and other things. But, I have all the games still in my calendar, like penciled in. And so every week I'm like, oh, we were supposed to play Hartford. Oh, we had a Wednesday game versus Boston, like, oh, that would have been so great. And, I don't know.
I had the same thing happen. I keep getting really depressed. I still am like old school. I have a handwritten schedule. So I took all the time. Back in, like you were saying, before the PSL canceled, like in March, when USL League 2 was coming out, when the NPSL schedule finally came out. It was a little bit later than I wanted it to be, but it did come out. And I just remember being so excited writing those dates down. And it was like almost a match day a week, with MLS games included, with championship games. There's a lot of soccer here in the Atlanta area, and it was like 4 or 5 games a week that I was going to be able to go do. And obviously now it's 0 games a week, but it's very sad to look back through those schedules and be like, oh man, that would have been a fun one. Man, I was looking forward to that one. But well, it'll be even more exciting next year, I suppose.
Yeah, it's everyone's fear is like, oh, everyone's going to forget about our club and we're going to lose all our momentum. But I think there's just all this pent up demand. People want to go to the matches. People want something to cheer for. People want to get together and experience things.
Yeah, no, I sure hope so. And that makes a lot more sense to me as well, because I've heard that argument, like, oh man, it's just they're not going to be able to recover. And again, it's situational. There are clubs that do really depend on that, like, momentum of having been in your face and having reminded you of their existence again and again and again, and that's kind of how they operate and get their support. But I think a lot of others, they've created a brand and something that people really have a desire for. And obviously a lot about that outside of the soccer world, and we'll get to that later too. But just the idea that, like, this, especially Stockade, is a brand that people care about and are going to go support whenever it's back. And so, like you said, that pent up demand, it's going to be awesome. When we finally do get them back, it's going to be awesome.
Yeah. No, and I think you're hitting on a good point where, there's a difference between people come out because they want to see, 2 teams play, and people come out because they want to be a part of the crowd. They want to be a part of community. They want to support the players. And, I think it's those clubs that it's not just like building a brand. It's more like building a community, right? Building a deeper meaning behind, win or lose, or what's the score, or play for 90 minutes. It's more about like, hey, this is the thing that you do to get out and be together with everyone else, and then to, support the region and support local vendors, and it's just a thing you want to experience. And I think we've been fortunate to build one of those clubs that people will come out rain or shine any day of the week, just because they want to be a part of it.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And so we'll hit on one more piece of weirdness before we get into more about Stockade. And this one is very intriguing to me. I wish we had more information about it. And I don't know if you've heard, but the UPSL has been acquired by something called ELP Brands, which I guess is a Florida-based company with apparently a lot of capital at their disposal, and
Yeah.
they've just purchased the entire UPSL. And they've been a bit cryptic. Both sides have been about what the move is going to mean. There's been a lot of speculation. What do we think is going to happen to the UPSL? Does it grow a lot? Does it try to incorporate other leagues with Pro Rel? Do we see just a higher quality with more money involved, or is this literally just a money grab for the ELP brands and we don't see any improvement? What are your thoughts on this, Dennis?
When did this deal get announced? To be honest, I haven't heard of it.
Okay, it was within like a couple of weeks. I think 2 weeks ago it went out, and everybody was just kind of like, what? What is okay? That's cool. What does it mean though? So UPSL announced it, and it went out on one of their news pages on their website, and it basically was a kind of a cookie cutter announcement that said, you know, ELP Brands has acquired UPSL, and talked about both entities, stuff that we already knew. But then it really didn't go into any depth as far as why the move happened, what the future plans were. And since then, I have not heard anything that clarifies it any further. So I think we're all kind of in the dark, but assuming, and this is a very positive assumption, but assuming that this is a move from ELP that's actually designed to improve the league, I think it's exciting. I think UPSL, as big as it is, that is an influx of cash that would certainly help them improve the quality to go with the quantity.
Yeah, I haven't read too much about it. Like as you're talking, I'm just kind of Googling the press release and reading it.
Yeah.
I like the fact that the UPSL has a large footprint. I mean, I think there's a couple hundred clubs there versus the NPSL that hovers around 90 or 100 clubs. And more clubs across the country is obviously better. There's always conversations about how do you get all these leagues working together. How do you take the best the best clubs from the UPSL? How do you bring them into the NPSL? As clubs perform the NPSL, how do they move to somewhere else, right? Like that was a really interesting journey that the NPSL's been on over the last couple of years, where you saw, clubs like Detroit and Chattanooga, move up to NISA. So there is kind of this gradual progression, which I think has been UPSL to NPSL to somewhere else. Although it's not an official thing. Like you don't win your promotion. You decide, hey, I think my budget can afford. I think my budget will allow us to travel on a overnight trips or get on a plane every now and then. And so that's really the catalyst from jumping from one league to the next. I think whether it's UPSL to NPSL or NPSL to NISA or NISA to something else. This is the whole, you could talk about this for 10 hours.
Oh, but, yeah.
How do you, is there a better structure? So it's not when an owner is wealthy enough to afford to make the jump, but rather when a team has proven that it is, capable and competent on the field, and maybe so much so that it needs to play in a higher division, and that there's some financial assistance for the teams that do that.
And that would certainly be nice, wouldn't it, to actually have some merit-based promotion within our American soccer leagues. And like you said, we could talk about it for so long. There's so much you can delve into. I need to start a podcast just purely for talking pro rel with people.
Just before we move off that topic, I mean, what's interesting is this conversation starts with there's a league called the UPSL. One person owned it, and he sold the league to another entity, and now it's what's the plan? What was the vision before? Is the vision different now? Is that league going to be more open to working, less open to working? It's so fragmented that there's anytime it feels like there's a little bit of momentum, something happens, and then the whole landscape is switched, right? And so I'll learn a little bit more about this after I get off the podcast, but UPSL getting bought, or the NASL going away, or leagues come and go, and it just it's just creates all this instability and
Yeah.
anxiety for teams, and it's just not healthy. Yeah.
No, and that's exactly what we don't want. Is that instability. That's exactly what's going to allow lower league clubs to continue being great and to continue to improve is stability. And we just, like you said, we don't have it yet. We do not have it yet because single actions will just kind of take us 2 steps backward when we made one forward. But yeah, so hopefully thinking again very positively here, ELP Brands has the intention and the ability to create more stability in the UPSL. That would certainly be cool.
Yeah, I'll get it. Well, maybe we'll have this discussion a year from now. We'll debate even further.
I hope so. I'm looking forward to that. We'll get on the schedule. But yeah, so now we're going to transition into our segment known as Who Dis, which is all about Stockade FC. So, Dennis, this is essentially just your time to tell us a little bit about who Stockade is. For those who do not know, what motivated you to start Stockade, and some may not be familiar with the work you've done on Medium to kind of outline financially what it took for you to make your club happen, and kind of there where you describe a little bit more about why you started Stockade. Just kind of run through that super briefly for us and give us an idea of who Stockade is.
Yeah, so we started the club in late 2015. We played our first season in 2016. This would have been our fifth season if if COVID wasn't canceled. The team is based in Kingston, New York, which is in a part of New York called the Hudson Valley. It's about 2 hours north of New York City. And my wife and I, we split our time between being in the city and being up here too. Kingston's a pretty small town. It's about 20,000 people. So it wasn't like a super obvious thing to try to put a soccer team here. But our philosophy, our thinking was like, hey, we live here. I would love to go see a match. I wish there was a team to go see. There is no team. I wonder why someone hasn't made one. I guess I'll just go out and make it. And, I'm kind of the least qualified person to put together a soccer team. I'm not a particularly skilled player. I didn't play in high school or college. I only picked up the game like 10 years ago, and I'm usually the worst person on the pitch. But I like to play. I like to watch. My other job is building technology companies, and so I'm pretty good at bringing people together and getting things built and working through a checklist of stuff. And so we put the club together. The roster is a mix of like college guys and unpaid amateurs. So we're not a pro team. We don't pay folks on the roster. The coaching staff is compensated. The rest of the club is all volunteers. We played a stadium called Dietz Stadium, which is our local. To be honest, it's a little run down. It's like a stadium from the 1950s that hasn't been renovated in a long time. Turf field, American football lines on it. But on some of our home games, we pack it. We've gotten 1,400 people in that stadium, which is people packed in really, really tight. We average maybe 900 fans a game, which is great. We just started getting food and food vendors and beer vendors. We're one of the first people in this area, like in Kingston, to be able to get those permits at that stadium, which has been great. And it's just been it's a super fun project, and it's super fun for me because it's totally analog. Like the rest of my life is all like doing Zoom calls and Slack and emails and stuff. And this is about like getting people together and kind of being off your phone and enjoying the atmosphere. But it's like you're getting people together. And I think the thing that really, the part that's been most rewarding to me is just seeing how much it means like to the community overall, but like also just like to the kids, right? And so you have all these kids that show up at the matches. You might have 200 kids at every match, and they want to get autographs every game. We hear from the parents all the time how like they're hooked on soccer. They look up to these players. All they want to do is play now. Like they weren't into sports before, but now all they want to do is run around. Like that I love that, because like I got this philosophy that hey, the only way that the U.S. ends up winning the World Cup is like when every American really cares about soccer and supports it and plays. You get a larger player pool. People don't drop out to play other sports. And I feel like Kingston is an example of one of 1,000 or 10,000 types of clubs that the U.S. needs, and which leads me to, after we put the club together, we said, hey, like, the last thing you want to be is just another lower level soccer club. Like, let's do everything we're doing and let's do a good job at it, but then let's also write about how we did it and why we did it and why we made certain decisions and what worked and what didn't and how much it cost and what we spent too much on and what surprised us and what we wasted money on, and just like, let's spell all the pitfalls out for people so that people can look and see, hey, this is how much it costs. This is what you're getting yourself into. It's super fun. It's super rewarding. It's a lot of work. It costs a bunch of money, but we think it's all worth it. Here's the roadmap. You do it. And what's also been rewarding is you see people, around the country. I hear from people all the time that like, hey, I started a club because I saw that you did it, and I had some visibility into how easy or how hard or how much work it was going to be, and people cite that as like, this is the thing that got me from not doing it to doing it, and that's great.
That's awesome. I love that feeling of just having somebody tell you, like, man, you were the person who, or your work inspired me to do this. Like, that's one of the best feelings. I feel like those are the kind of things that I live for, to feel like I had some kind of purpose, I guess. But apply that to lower league soccer is awesome. But yes, that's just that whole idea that you took the time and the effort, because that's a lot more time and effort to literally just detail and write about the entirety of all of your expenses over the year, why you made those expenses, what just the thought process behind all of it. You just totally unmasked the whole process, because it's a very concealed process for whatever reason. It's people's finances, it's just you don't share that in a normal situation. So it was very cool that you took all that time and effort and were willing to do that. And like you said, we've seen that just for ordinary people that have really benefited from seeing that, who have kind of pondered and just didn't know enough to be able to actually do it themselves, and now they are. So that's a really cool project.
It's worth noting that, like, when we published, I published the first one, which didn't have any numbers in it. It was more like, hey, we made a club. I'm going to tell you about it. It's like kind of the origin story of the club. And then it was after the first season I published that really long thing of all the numbers. And I remember going to the NPSL owners meeting, and people are like, what are you doing, man? Publishing all these numbers, you're going to scare people off from the league. And I'm like, no. This is going to show people, this is a blueprint for how to make a club. And people will look at this and they'll say, yeah, I can do this. This will result in better, more and higher quality clubs over time, because people will understand the time and financial commitment that's required to make a quality club. And I kind of think that's what's happened. And so it was a rather controversial thing at first. At least I ran into, some people that were like, I don't know if you should have done that. And, now it's just, in hindsight, seems obvious. And, like, I had started 2 other companies before this, and I never documented the process. And I always regretted not doing it. And I always said, like, hey, if I ever do another thing after Foursquare, I want to document it from day one. So you capture kind of the feeling and the emotions of, like, the early parts of the ride, which is like the craziest part of it. And that which is why I sat down and wrote. It took me freaking forever to write it, but like that's why I kind of got in the rhythm of doing it. Now, and I haven't written a post like that in like 2 years. And I was really pissed off. I didn't do it last year. Like, my wife and I we've had 2 kids since we started the club, and kids take up a lot of time, right? And so, like, the free time I used to have to, like, just sit and write for hours, like, now I'm like putting the kids to bed and I want to take a nap after that because it's exhausting on its own. But I want to do another one about, like, hey, what does it mean for our club in COVID, right? How much money did we lose by not playing? So that seems like it's worthy.
No, because that's really the question on everybody's mind. And like we've already talked about, it's going to be different for different clubs. But just to have any kind of guess in the region of what most clubs are dealing with, it would be super insightful for a lot of people following the sport at this level. And insightful to know, like, what's it going to take for them to come back? What did it take for them to make the right choice and decide not to play? You know, there's a lot of questions that gets answered through something like that. So that would be very cool. I will personally be on the lookout for that. Hope that comes out at some point.
Yeah, thanks for the nudge. I'll make a note. Again, I really should just bang that out and try to do that when we.
You really, you legitimately should. I would be very excited to read that. But yeah, no, that's awesome. Just the entire idea of creating the club just because there was a need for it, and not because you felt qualified to fill it, but just because you saw that it could be filled and you just made it happen. I've heard that, or some variants of that story from just about everybody I've talked to. You know, they were like, well, there's this gap and I don't know if I really have the time or the resources or the qualification to do it, but heck, I'm just going to do it because I can. And it works out and it becomes this awesome club that people care about. So it's a really cool essence that this community has, I think. And it's cool to see that from you. Also, side note, thank you so much for being the first person I've had on here that wasn't like this soccer phenom growing up and they're like, oh yeah, I started playing when I was 3. I'm like, dude, whatever, man. I'm also trash at actual soccer. I love to watch it, love to follow it, but I'm terrible on the pitch. Like you, I'm probably the worst one on any pitch that I step foot on. But yes, I needed that self-esteem boost.
Yeah, it's funny. The guys are always like, "Hey, come out and train with us." Like, "Hey, you should sign up for open tryouts." And I'm like, "Guys, I kind of want to preserve this imaginary view you have of me of being like an epic player." And like the moment they see a first touch, they're like, "Oh, what a joker!"
Yes.
So.
The more you don't say anything or show anything about your quality, you can.
I go out of my way to stay away from the ball and game days, like as to not disappoint the players.
Right. Yeah, that's hilarious. But yes, yeah, no, that's awesome. Love that window into what Stockade's doing. But we're gonna hit Small World score sheet just because we can for the first time in a very long time. The first time ever since the podcast has been running. So we're gonna just take a look at some scores around the lower league soccerverse, and there are a few. So UWS on the women's side. They are kind of a WPSL level equivalent for those who don't know. And they have a secondary league under them that's called UWS League 2. And so that league is underway. And so the very first match of the season was between Unity FC, a club that SmallWorld is pretty connected with. We're good friends with them. They took a pretty nice dub this week with a 4-1 win over Orlando FC Royals. So that was exciting. A good opportunity to see women's soccer back. I know that there's been a lot of controversy recently over NWSL, and they were planning to come back. That was supposed to happen like this weekend. As far as we know, it still is, but the Orlando representative, Orlando Pride, has withdrawn because like 6 or 7 of their players tested positive. So they are all quarantining and not playing. So that's just a whole scenario. But it's cool to see at a lower level, of course, not the same level of interest and quality of play, but still, it's very cool to see women's soccer back when men's soccer is getting all the attention of, oh, are they coming back? Are they coming back? Should they be? I think we miss those leagues that are also at a high quality level and that also matter quite a bit.
Yeah, there was an interesting article in the New York Times over the weekend, and it's just like 100 days with no sports. Like, what does that do for the U.S. and what does that look like if it extends into the fall? If it extends into collegiate seasons? You know, if the NFL doesn't come back, like that's like a lot of the stuff is like a big part of American culture and self identity of individuals and communities. And we were kind of talking about that earlier. Like I go to the coffee shop and people will just stop me on the street and be like, "Oh, I'm so bummed that we can't go to a match." Right. And, it's a small town in Kingston, never mind like, New England Patriots can't play. What does that do for the greater New England area? And how does that make people feel? I mean, sports are important. Sports are part of people's lives, and it's super weird not to have it.
I know. Yeah. And this has been a very interesting experiment for how important sports really are in our culture and in our world. Like it means a lot. I think I think we didn't realize how much it means until we lost it, and that's how it is with anything. You know, you don't realize quite what you have until it's gone. But it is very interesting to see how much we've lost as we've lost sports. Like it's a lot more than the entertainment of it, for sure. It's a whole industry.
Yeah.
But yes. Yeah. That being said, congratulations, Unity FC. It's a nice 4-1 win to get the season started strong. And then the UPSL is also underway in a few different areas. In fact, 3 very different areas of the country. We're playing in Florida, we're playing in Texas, and they're also playing in Alaska, because why not?
Yeah.
In Florida, Florida Tropics, which again, big fans of Florida Tropics at SmallWorld. They had a 0-0 draw against Celtic Gunners in the Southeast Florida division. Come on, Florida Tropics. I don't know what y'all are doing. That is not exciting enough for me. Gotta see some goals from y'all. But not a bad way to start the season. In the Southeast Florida Central Division, because this is how confusing it gets, Royal Palms SC was in action, which is a small world favorite as well. They did end up losing 4-3 to FK Orlando. Side note, don't have any idea what FK stands for. They just spell club with a K. I don't know. But whatever FK is, they beat Royal Palms, so we hate them now. Moving to Texas, in the UPSL Central South Division, Greens Point Gunners, they were a fixture in the lower league E Cup. I don't know if you followed that at all, Dennis, but Greens Point did pretty well in the E Cup. They have not performed nearly as well in actual soccer. They've lost 4-0 to Houston FC. They have to hit the Atlantic League. The UPSL Last Frontier Division, which is fantastic. Alaska Timbers, which is a Portland Timbers affiliate, they won 4-1 over Arctic Rush, which is an excellent name. It makes me think of like a river in Alaska or something. Arctic Rush. I don't know. But the Arctic Rush was not up to par as Alaska Timbers beat them 4-1. Looking having even more scores to bring you over the coming weeks, but I was very excited that we could actually do that. With that,
no, good. A good taste of bringing stuff back to normal.
Yeah, yes, that's right. At least a little. But yes, indeed. All right. So as we start to think about wrapping things up, real quickly, just for a couple minutes. I'd like to know you a little bit more, Dennis, and I think a lot of us know you as a startup guy. Probably a lot of us know Foursquare. If don't, I mean, maybe some people haven't connected the dots. That's you who founded it. And I know we've talked a little bit about how you didn't feel super qualified to run a soccer club, but going off of that, like, what's your soccer story? When did you first kind of realize you enjoyed it, and how has that led into starting Stockade?
Oh, that's a great question. It was 2010. It was 2010 when the World Cup was in South Africa, and like I was about a year into Foursquare. It was like the knee deep, like super crazy part of starting the company, and like all my buddies and I in New York, like we would go to the bars to see the USA play. And, they just aired this game again last night, USA versus Algeria. It was the recast. I didn't get to see it on TV again, but, it was on again last night. But we were watching that in a bar in New York City, a soccer bar called Slancha. And Landon Donovan scores. I can't remember if it was extra time or what in the last minutes of the game.
Yeah.
Bar goes crazy. All my friends are there. Everyone's jumping all over each other. There's a pig pile on the floor. Beer spills everywhere. And one of our buddies, my buddy Randy, was like, "We got to start a team. We got to all play together." And then it was like the next day. Everyone's had like 10 beers. And the next day, someone signed us up to play in a local league in the city. And like Metro Soccer or something. These leagues in New York City are competitive. Like you'll get the entire team that used to play together at Villanova will join like a 7-on-7 squad. And so like, Dennis, you're going to play. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to play. I'm like, I haven't played since I was like 5 years old on the green team of whatever rec league there was. And so they start me in right back, and I'm just like, I have no business being on this field. I don't know what I'm doing. I kind of am not even familiar with like some of the rules in terms of how aggressive to be and whatnot. And, it was embarrassing. It was probably embarrassing for at least a year or so. And, I just kind of settled into my position at right back and gradually got a little bit more comfortable with the ball. My brother played in high school. He would take me to we go to the park together in Brooklyn, and he would kind of teach me some basic foot skills and stuff. And just, passing and dribbling and moving with the ball. And that's kind of, and I was 32 when I picked up the game. 30 or whatever, Wow. And so late in life, but that kind of got me into it. And then my brother and I, we went to that year, we decided just to go to a last minute trip to South Africa. We went to the World Cup. We saw 4 matches in the quarters and the semis. And that was my first time ever going to a World Cup. And I remember we touched down in Johannesburg in South Africa. We stayed at kind of this like pretty shitty hotel. It was the last thing we could get. And then we walked into town 20 minutes after putting our bags down, and we just went to like the soccer village in Joburg, and just to see all these people from all over the world, everyone wearing flags, everyone with scarves around their heads, just like celebrating their country, celebrating their teams. And I was like, this is awesome. This is like the best thing I've ever seen in sports, because it was global, and it was just people from all over the world. And I just kind of fell in love with it from that point on. And then I just started paying attention, to everything. And, it was eight years later that we started the club. And to be honest, like another part of the club story is, we were, after playing one of these games one night, 7 years after the club was started, we were out in a bar in Brooklyn called Angry Wade's. And we were there being like, what would have to happen for our team? Our team was called Alphabet City Soccer Club. What would have to happen for Alphabet City to play the Red Bulls? And everyone kind of knew, there's the U.S. Open Cup, and that's where big teams play small teams. But like, what actually has to happen? Like, how do we go from 7 guys to 11 guys to a team that could actually qualify for the Open Cup? And then, I remember I went to work the next day. I had a slow day at work, and I kind of fell down the Wikipedia rabbit hole that is like, lower level soccer. And then the next time we went out for beers, I'm like, listen, there's a couple lower level leagues. There's one called the NPSL. We could get Alphabet City in the NPSL. We replace us with real players, and we could qualify for the Open Cup. And those guys are like, you're crazy. That's never going to happen. And I just had that idea stuck in my head for like a year. And I was on my porch at the house here in Kingston, and I was like, you know what we do? We start a club up here. And that's how we qualify for the U.S. Open Cup. It's not Alphabet City that does it. It's a new club. What are we going to call it? We'll call it, Kingston. All this stuff came together weeks later. Kingston Stockade. We'll play at Dietz Stadium. We'll be in the NPSL. We'll play in the North Atlantic. We'll have to beat the Cosmos. We'll have to beat Brooklyn Italians. And, that we did it. Like, we set a 5-year goal for our club where it's like, we want to qualify for the U.S. Open Cup within the first 5 years of having this team. And people are like, that's bananas. You'll never do it. And we did it on the 3rd year. We made it to the Open Cup. I couldn't believe it. It's incredibly satisfying. We go and we play the Rough Riders in Long Island. We got a away draw, which I thought sucked. But we played out in Long Island. It's a hell of a match. I want to say the score was 6-2 at the end of it, but it was tied up until, call it the 85th minute, when the wheels fell off the bus for us. But man, what an experience. And now I'm talking like a mile a minute because it got me super excited. And all anyone wants to do is get back to the Open Cup, right? Like, yeah, we want to play. Yes, we want to play in Kingston. Yes, we want to have a great season. Yes, we want to bring the food trucks back. Yes, we want to inspire the kids. But you talk to the coaches, you talk to the folks that work in scouting, you talk to the volunteers, you talk to the players. It's like, get us back in the cup. Let's get back in the cup. So like, our new goal, like, not just get back in, but qualify for the cup and get a home game, a home U.S. Open Cup game here in the Hudson Valley, which is never done. And you gotta get a lucky flip of the coin with U.S. Soccer to get that home draw. But that is my new dream for Stockade. So that's That's what I want. I want to get 4,000 people together in a stadium up here and be like, see this? This is lower soccer in the Hudson Valley. This is what it looks like. You just got me super excited for that. So.
Yeah, no, that'd be so cool. I gotta ask you a few questions. This is a small world tradition that we ask all of our podcasters, or podcast guests, that is. I'm going to ask you to describe your childhood in a few ways, and this is just to get to know you in kind of a fun way. But we are running out of time, so we're going to do it kind of in a speed round. So have you described your childhood in just one food?
One food, mac and cheese.
You could describe it in just one. There we go. Yeah, no, that's a pretty popular one. It's just
hot dog.
From yeah, that's right. Yes, the mac and cheese, the hot dog. That was more one. I don't think I get that one again. That was I believe in Mississippi. I'm getting one TV show for me.
One TV growing up?
Yeah, one TV show growing up.
Chips. Chips is motorcycle cops.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
that's honestly a pretty fun one. That's pretty cool. I like that. Like usually you get like cartoons.
Oh, it's either Chips, G.I. Joe, or Knight Rider.
Man, you watched some pretty cool shows as a kid. You know the action and stuff. I like that.
That was because that was before Nintendo. Then once Nintendo came out, then it was just all Nintendo.
Right. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, they took over that space. And then in one phrase, childhood in one phrase.
Oh, just in general, one phrase?
Yeah, just one phrase.
Playing in the woods.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Yeah, again, this is going along with the theme of Dennis Crowley really enjoyed action on his television shows and in real life. And now in lower league soccer, he's trying to get some U.S. Open Cup action into the Hudson Valley. I think that's what we got to take away from this. But yes, Dennis, I cannot thank you enough. This has been a fantastic opportunity to get to know you better, to get to know Stockade, and to just run through some lower league soccer this week. Really, really appreciate you coming on. And yeah, so how can people follow Stockade as we close this up?
Yeah, we're on all the social media channels you know and love. You can find us at Stockade FC. Additionally, we're always, the best way to support a club like ours is to buy merch, right? Like I was wearing my hat before. I got our special, COVID edition T-shirts. Stay home. All this stuff is on our website, stockadefc.com.
Yeah, they have excellent merch. Go check all of it out. And if you're in the area, definitely go catch a match. But yes, Dennis, once again, thank you so much. It has been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. And it's been an absolute pleasure to bring all of you listening this week's edition of Small World Soccer Report. We will see you guys again on Saturday. I know this is a weird time to be releasing an episode, but we're doing this to catch you up. Get 2 in 1 week because we missed it last week. So very excited to bring you what we've got coming next. Thank you all for listening as always, and stay weird, everyone.
Thanks for having me on the show.